I wish I could give you a rational answer to your rational question, but it's very difficult to do so. Starting with the economics point of view, foreign aid by the United States amounts to about 60 to 70 billion dollars a year, which is less than 1% of the US budget. So it's hard to consider this a priority from an economic basis. Um, it really doesn't make a lot of sense any way you look at it, but we can talk about that.
Mhm. If I may speak about the freeze, and this freeze has raised concerns about its impact on humanitarian efforts, with a country like the US that it has this big dream of being the protector of humanity, of values and principles. Now, this is threatening, particularly in regions dealing with severe crises. What are the immediate consequences for vulnerable populations from your point of view would be?
Yeah, I think you put that very well. The fact is that it has very severe consequences because of all the aid we supply to many countries that need it in the area of health services, vaccinations, aid to schools. Let me give you an example.
Mm.
I'm a former chairman of the board of Lebanese American University in Beirut, one of the three American universities that rely heavily on U.S. aid. American University of Cairo is another one. So, aid to these students who can't afford the education at an American university is just one example of the kind of effect that this measure has, and it really is unjustified.
Mhm. Now, critics argue that such a drastic move could push affected nations towards alternative global powers. How do you think that could be, and what could the long-term geopolitical implications be?
Yes, that's a real concern. For example, if we stop aid to some of these countries in need that have been depending on it for years, it opens the door for some of America's adversaries, like China in particular, with its Belt and Roads Initiative, to come right in, make a lot of friends, and change the balance of alliances that the U.S. has depended on, which is why a measure like this is frankly very hard to understand.
How do you think, from your point of view, would people take it if I'm speaking about vulnerable nations and populations? How will they look into matters when they see how or the grave support of the U.S. to Ukraine, for Israel, and on the other hand, the U.S. freezing its aid for humanitarian aspects. How do you think people would look into that?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much answered the question. Nobody is going to look at it very favorably. Yes, the United States has been supporting Ukraine for all the right reasons because it was unjustly invaded by Russia, and that will likely continue. However, the aid that is going to some of the countries in need for basic services that are being cut when this is not an important part of the American budget at all, again, is very difficult to explain and will not, and will have, it could have serious consequences with our allies and with our relationships with some of these countries going forward.
Programs like U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS, for instance, AIDS relief, the PEPFAR, which have historically received bipartisan support, are now very much at risk. Now, what could this mean for global health initiatives and U.S. influence in combating crises, particularly with the decision of withdrawing from the WHO?
Yeah, remember, this is a 90-day suspension, but of course, a lot of damage can be done in 90 days. One has to hope that the administration and others involved will come to their senses and put an early end to this ban on foreign aid,
Mm.
which is very important for American relationships abroad. I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure.
Um, Hopefully, we'll see. Remains to be seen the answer to my question in this upcoming stage or after the 90 days you're speaking about. Now, from a financial perspective, how are international organizations and NGOs adapting to this sudden policy shift, and could it prompt a restructuring of the global aid system?
Yeah, of course, the big agency in the United States, which is part of the State Department, is USAID, which administers the aid that is given to the countries abroad and is the primary way of distributing U.S. aid. There are also subdivisions of this, like ASHA, which stands for American Schools and Hospitals Abroad, that help, obviously, American schools and hospitals abroad. All of these are affected by this. And as I said earlier, one has to hope that the leaders in the administration and the president comes to their senses and realize that this was a completely unnecessary move. Hopefully it ends quickly and before the 90 days is up.
Now, this decision has been framed as an effort to ensure foreign aid aligns with US interests. So, what are the US interests?
I wish I could answer that. I mean, we should be interested in helping countries in need and forging our good relationships in the Middle East, who depend on us for areas where they need help. As we mentioned, not only in food, which is exempt, but in education, in vaccination, in health programs, in construction, and various other things. This is what helps foster good relations between the United States and many of these foreign countries, and it doesn't cost us very much in terms of the American economy. Yet, without it, we are opening the door for adversaries of the United States to make inroads and destroy the relationships that we have had for decades with some of these countries. So I wish I could offer you a logical explanation of why this is happening, but it's very hard to do.
Let me here get back to what we were speaking about and about the US values and interests abroad. Of course, the foreign aid has been a critical tool for promoting the US values and interests, and such as definitely the democracy, the human rights. Now, how does this aid or aid freeze affect the US ability to promote these ideals on the global stage?
Well, obviously, it hurts it. We have used this aid not only to show our generosity and our caring for countries that are in need, but we have used it to foster better relationships with these countries and alliances that are very helpful to the United States in terms of the world order. uh, Stopping this aid will have the exact opposite effect, and clearly not in the United States' best interest. So it is very important that we all come to our senses and correct this as soon as possible, not wait 90 days.